How's it going, Critter Family? I hope you all are doing well. Today we are going over a horsey video. It's been a little while. This is from Colton Wood's Horsemanship. Never do these horrible natural horsemanship exercises again if you like your horse. Sounds like if you practice things that are not for your horse, then you're not really a horseman. They're just labeled as such. But I thought this would be a good video to go over. We can actually go over some a positive video for once, where there is somebody who is advocating for the animal. And it's been a while since we've done some horsey stuff. So if you're ready, then let's get started.
Some terrible horsemanship information floating around on the internet. Some of it's been taught for years and even decades at this point that is detrimental to your horses. It's detrimental to your riding. It's detrimental to your progress together with your horse as your partner. And this video, to put it lightly, is going to ruffle some feathers because we're going to tackle 5 of the biggest issues of things that is taught in the horsemanship industry that is holding you and your horses back, that's breaking your horses down, breaking down your partnership, breaking them down physically. And I mean that quite literally. I'm going to explain to you why, because I'm not somebody that's just going to bring up a problem and not provide a solution. We're going to talk about what the problem is, why it's the problem, and the solution, and how we can actually overcome that, and talk about some of the things that frankly do not get talked about enough, because some of these clinicians, some of these professionals are trying to keep you entrenched in their programs to say you have to go step by step by step by step, and you're not
buy my 6 CD whatever, or my 6-step program, or my whatever 12-step program, and you get them in increments, and it's like $300 a pop, and just, yeah, absolutely, I'm right there with you.
To go to the next step unless you complete this step because I said so. And it's absolutely freaking ridiculous. And so for those of you guys that don't know who I am, my name's Colton Woods. I do these videos to bring you real raw horse training, to talk about real problems and real results with these with our horses, so that way we can actually go out there and build the partnerships, and once we can have dependable, reliable skills with our horses. And with that being said, let's jump into today's video. This one's going to ruffle some feathers, and let's get into it.
I mean, shoot, that's what I do. So
this next one causes some of the biggest issues with people and their horses when it comes to
have a snaffle bit. I'm not a fan of bits, but
natural horsemanship exercises that get taught to people. First and foremost, what's the biggest problem is it causes a lot of physical issues, lameness issues, and physical tension issues with our horses. But beyond that, if you've had a horse that you've done a lot of these natural horsemanship groundwork exercises or even ridden exercises with, I'm going to show you what it is just here in a second, but it causes horses to be so wiggly, for them not to be able to ride straight, to not feel balanced. And let's just
I can appreciate he lets his horse like scratch his little chin. He's not all up in its face.
Show you what that exercise is. And while I get him trotting, you can take a guess at what you might think it is. So they'll be riding their horses around. They're like, I'm going to do my horsemanship exercise. And they're going to go,
it looks like he's kind of bouncing
I need to disengage the hind end. And I move their hind end around.
Ow.
And then I'm going to take them this way.
I say ow because he's using a snaffle bit.
And I need to disengage their hind end this way. And I got to keep going and 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 keep going. And I guess that's good. And I'm going to go it again. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. And I just keep going and going and going and disengaging and disengaging and disengaging.
So he's backing his horse up.
Long, you've got your horse freaking lamed up, and your horse can't ride a freaking straight line. When you're riding your horse around, it feels like they got weight in the hind end. Feels like the Italian job, right? Those little Mini Coopers, and they're just drifting around the corners because you can't actually get them to go straight because the engine.
I can't tell how tight the bit is. I mean, it looks like it might be a little tight, but maybe not.
Is out of alignment. They're not driving straight up underneath. They're constantly going side to side to side to side. And tell me how I know, because I fell into the trap myself early in my career of listening to these clinicians and listening to these people. And it's not just one clinician or other. It's a lot of them, right? It's a lot of them. And do you need to be able to disengage your horse's hind end? Yes, absolutely. You need a one-rein stop. You need to be able to stay safe.
Good.
You need to be able to start to introduce your horse how to actually engage their hind end. But you need to get away from the constant disengagement of the horse's hind end as quickly as you possibly can, so that you can actually start to ride your horse with real straightness, with real balance, so they can guide and you're not constantly pulling them around. We'll probably talk about that one in another video too, of being able to guide them around and them actually able to drive with the hind end. But the constant disengaging the hindquarters has to stop.
You know, the other clinicians might be doing that because they want your horse to not be able to ride straight. So you can stay stuck with them, for more and more. And they say, oh, okay, I created this problem. Don't worry, I can fix it. And they create another problem and so on and so forth. I'm not saying that that's anyone's diabolical plan, but I wouldn't be surprised.
You guys have probably heard one of these famous
Oh, good.
clinicians
Nice
out
rope
here
halter.
saying that if you
Very
want
nice.
to look like a pig farmer, just go ride your horse around in a rope halter. And it's one of the worst things that I see in the natural horsemanship community is people that constantly just get stuck riding their horses in a rope halter. And I'm going to explain to you why, right? I'm not just going to sit here and be disrespectful and be like, oh, you shouldn't ride your horse in a rope halter.
Absolutely. That's what I believe in. Don't use a bit. You don't need a bit.
It's completely atrocious and you look like a pig farmer.
Okay. Who cares if you can control your horse with a rope around their nose or a rope around their neck, then you're that much more advanced than someone who relies on a bit. I don't care what you say.
Okay, I don't think it's necessarily disrespectful to your horse, but it's not effective, and that's the underlying point here. Is that our tack are specifically the stuff that we put on our horse's face, a snaffle bit, any kind of a bit that we use, the type of reins that we put on, the type of headgear that we put on our horse. It's there to be effective in the communications.
I disagree with that. That's one thing I could disagree with him is that it's pain compliance, pain and force, and compliance. And so this horse will respond just fine, if not better, in a rope halter or something that's not putting pain in his mouth, because he's not, reacting to the pain. Where people, even these mechanical hackamores, I'll put a picture up here, where people say, oh no, my horse rides bitless, but they have a mechanical hackamore, which would be probably causes more pain and confusion than if you had a snaffle bit in the horse's mouth. I almost said dog's mouth. But I'm not at all for bits or spurs. It looks like he has spurs on. I can't tell, but spurs, or maybe not, but spurs or whips or any of that nonsense. I feel like natural horsemanship is using just a regular rope halter. And you can use like Rick Gord recommends, sail line for your rope. You don't have to use that thick nylon stuff that's really hard and stiff.
We're trying to have with our horses, okay? And rope halters are not an effective use of equipment.
Yes, they absolutely are. I can do all sorts of things. Why is it that so many people can ride their horses bitless in a rope halter or a bitless bridle without any worry? If you're relying on a piece, it's just like a dog with a prong collar. If you're relying on a piece of metal equipment or a halter on a dog's face, then you're relying on the tool to do the work for you. And you're not relying on your own skill of being able to communicate with the animal without relying on a tool.
We ride our horses in a rope halter for the first 1 to 3 rides in the colt starting process. Why? Because they've been handled in a rope halter.
So if you can ride them then why not continue riding them? Unless you're, doing all these unnecessary sports like barrel riding and all this other yeehaw and dressage nonsense. I call it nonsense because it doesn't benefit the animal, but if you can lead them, as Rick Gore says, if you can lead them in a halter, you can ride them in a halter. What's wrong with that?
That's what the horse is familiar with. But it's not a great communication.
What's not natural? Any of this? It's not natural? A bit in the mouth on the gums that's been made and designed to cause the most pain compliance in the end. I can't think of anything that's more painful unless putting something directly on an eyeball. Putting something in the mouth of something on their gums, the area where they don't have teeth, which is called the bars, a piece of metal iron, and then controlling your animal that way. I would much rather do the least evasive technique possible, which would be using a halter.
Device. Because when you pick up on this, you can see how if I go to ask this horse to back up here, if I take a hold, now this horse is going to be soft. But if your horse, like most of the horses out there, are kind of rigid, and I go to take it, see how I'm pushing on the base of his neck? So I'm not asking this horse really.
Well, that's because the halter is way too big. So now he's lying to you. He's using a little gimmick saying that it's pushing on the back of the neck. If you want to teach your horse the base of the neck, fine. You can use a rope and use the rope. How do so many people use a rope around here and get their horse to back up and left and right and do all sorts of things by taking the time it takes and developing the skills and really true bond with your horse without relying on pain compliance.
Back up because my seat hasn't moved, and that's how this horse backs up. If I change my seat, he's going to back up. Okay, proof and point. Okay. So
you could still teach him.
Okay.
You could still teach him to back up by the feeling on his neck. That's called neck reining. Neck reining would really be, left or right, and they turn their head. If they feel it here, they would turn their head right, and if they feel it here, they would turn their head left. That takes a lot of time, though, working with your horse. But this halter is just ill-fitted, it seems like, for this horse. It seems a bit too big for this horse, but, I don't know. Either way, I'm not like I'm not super horse savvy with tack and fitting and all that nonsense, you know, or it's not nonsense, but all that stuff, you know, but I do know that it is absolutely possible to teach your horse to do anything in a halter.
But when I take a hold of this, you see how I'm pulling against the base of his neck? The worst thing you can
He just gave
with
a step back. He gave a step back, and that's how you start. You know, the old cowboys used to say, if you want to have soft hands, you would take your halter and you would put a piece of horse hair between the halter and your lead rope. And if you can do everything you want to with that horse without breaking that horse hair, you have soft hands. So why is it that we have to now then rely on a bit and all this other archaic hard metal to control a horse when the horse responds just fine leading by a horsehair, leading by a piece of hay string, leading by a rope halter? So I think he's being a little bit biased there.
Horses back up in a rope halter is be pushing and giving them something to brace on.
No, there's plenty of examples where the halter fit better. It was not big like this, and you were not pulling against the horse's neck. You know, I'll take a video myself and see if I can show you, if I have a proper fitting halter on a horse, that I can get them to back up with the halter without anything touching their neck. Okay.
Base of their neck. So that part is really bad. There's also
this is an ill-fitting halter.
Play, like it's super wiggly. There's not consistent
that
contact.
Halter is way too big for this horse,
and it's not very clear. You can see how it shifts around his nose.
So then you just bring the rope and you give yourself longer range, or you bring in the rope. So then you just bring the rope in further to the right, and it makes the horse turn their head. I mean, the way he tied this is just atrocious. You know, he just put a little knot around here that can go flapping about. That's going to come undone right away. So again, I feel like he's being biased here.
So it's not very clear in exactly what I'm trying to communicate. You take a traditional rawhide Boselle that fits nicely.
I don't like the Boselle, the traditional rawhide, because it's rawhide and it's rough and it can be, I mean, yes, it's much better than this, but the rope halter is much better than the Boselle. The Boselle does the same thing, but because it's fitted, it's going to rub your horse's nose raw. So I prefer not to have that. I would rather have like a leather piece on there, or like, you know, even braided rope halter, or it can be padded, whatever you want. You know, I wouldn't mind having a padded rope halter, a little piece of padding there. So that way we're moving to pressure, but not like a pressure point on the nose. It's more surface area than it is just a single point of pressure on that nose.
A nice, well-fitting boot around that horse's nose.
But the boot hurts the foot too, and the foot has protection of a sock. The nose is pure bone and cartilage, and it doesn't have all that much protection from a hard piece of raw hide. So I'm not a fan of the traditional Boselle, which is a traditional hackamore, versus a mechanical hackamore.
That gives you very clear communication.
If you have a proper fitting halter, then you can get clear communication. Don't give me that nonsense.
It can actually make sense to your horse. But when we're in the natural horsemanship community, there's so many people that are just like, well, I ride in this because I think it's better for my horse, or I think it's nicer. You know what's nicer and better for your horse? Things that make your communication better.
No, that I disagree. People can say that about a prong collar on a dog. People can say that about a bit in a horse's mouth. That's not communication. That's just pain compliance, and you're forcing your horse. They can learn through it. But why is it that so many people can do all sorts of things with a rope halter, with a rope around the neck, nothing in the mouth, nothing on the face? That takes real communication. So I think he's stuck on the cheater way.
And rope halters do not do that. Okay?
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
We don't do a whole lot of pulling on these halters. It's a lot of driving. It doesn't make sense. So the best thing you can do for your horse is to get your horse out of a rope halter.
No, I disagree with that. I absolutely disagree with that.
If you don't want to put a bit in your horse's mouth, touche. Do your freaking thing and go put them in a real hackamore, a rawhide Boselle.
I disagree with that as well. I mean, that's better than at least he gives you the option, but I disagree with that going into a rawhide hackamore, you know, Boselle. I mean, I would rather a traditional hackamore to a mechanical hackamore, because it has leverage and it causes more pain. There's a chain under the chin, but, you know, I think there's nothing wrong with a rope halter or a bitless bridle.
That actually can be effective in keeping you and your horse much safer and being effective in community.
He hasn't spent time riding an adult horse longer in a rope halter, so he doesn't have the experience in knowing that that's perfectly fine to ride a horse in that. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next.
Thankful, because this is noisy. Okay, this has a lot of noise because there's a lot of wiggle to it.
Well, yeah, when you're practicing that with your horse, but you can still teach your horse to ignore that, you know, and only listen to you when you give them all the cues together. If you just give them one cue, they may not respond to that. And you can teach them to ignore the loud hands. But, you know, it's a cheat when you have a metal bit in the mouth, because all you have to do is use a finger press and the horse says, oh, I feel that ouch because it's painful on my gums.
Actually achieve the goals with your horse, you go get a piece of equipment that can help you achieve that.
I disagree.
One of the biggest lies in the horsemanship big time folks are teaching is that your horse has to spend months and years on the end of a loose rein going around before you ever can pick up on them. And I think they all have different intentions, but they go around teaching you that your horse needs to go around on.
That was kind of a loud stop from loose to tight. That was
a loose rein, walk, trot, canter, never touch their face, all of this sorts of stuff. And some of them do it because they're gatekeeping. Right,
sure.
And that's a pet peeve of mine. I don't believe in gatekeeping. They basically tell people that you shouldn't pick up on your horse and start to get your horse soft in the face because.
See, as he moves, the horse has his ears back. The horse is getting ready. He's like, okay, are we going or not? You know, he's waiting for that cue, but he doesn't move because all the cues together are not. He's not getting all the cues together.
Basically, they're saying you're not talented enough to be able to do your rein management and to be able to take a hold of your horse in a soft way that can be beneficial to the horse. So you just shouldn't do it at all. And guess what? If you want to get better at your rein management, if you want to learn how to ride your horse at a higher level, guess what you got to do? You got to start trying to ride your horse at a higher level. You got to start getting that horse to be softer. But the other thing is that they tell you that these horses have to go around, walk, trot, canter on a loose rein for weeks and months and years on end before they're
that just sounds silly.
To go around with them actually starting to get soft vertically and using their body.
Okay, so I don't like that. I don't like any of that nonsense where you collect the horse. He's doing that by pulling on this, what looks like a rusty, I mean, it looks rusty to me. It's not rusty on the inside, but on the outside, it's a rusted snaffle bit. I'm giving him a little bit more crap now because of, you know, where he stands on bits and everything, and how he's telling you that rope halters are not, you know, are not a safer way to work with your horse and whatnot. He's kind of, you know, shitting on rope halters. So I'm going to give him a little bit more, you know, less lenience, but I don't like this whole ride your horse collected. I don't think it's natural.
Properly. But here's why it's such a freaking lie, and it drives me absolutely nuts, is that our hands, our rein contact, when we go to take a hold of our horse, is to help our horses go around in a body position that complements their conformation. It should help them use themselves in a more healthy way.
I don't think so. I don't agree, because they use their head as balance. So what do you mean that this collection is better for the rider? Well, maybe depending on what the rider's doing, if the rider is just running them around in little tight circles inside the arena, but I still don't like it. It just doesn't look natural to me. And I wouldn't want to be walking around like this carrying something on my back.
And when horses go around constantly on the buckle or on a loose rein, they get strung out. Their back is down, their chest and their sternum is pushed towards the ground. They are not using themselves in a biomechanically friendly way. They're using themselves as being strung out, and they're going to have braciness through their body. And
that's only if they're only going to brace themselves and tuck their back down if you don't know how to ride when you're trotting. If you're just bouncing on their back, of course they're going to hollow their back out and be uncomfortable because you don't know how to ride properly.
They might be able to free up through their feet, but they're not using themselves in a way that is.
I mean, I don't know about all this, you know. I don't know enough about the horse's conformation and all that good stuff, you know, to be able to comment on that. So we're going to move on to the next one, talking about flawed groundwork techniques.
Without that being said, let's get back to the video. This next one is an absolute freaking pet peeve of mine. And
see, if you can work your horse, that's a very stiff looking rope. If you can work your horse in a rope halter, you can ride them in a rope halter just fine.
You guys, whether you've done this with your horses,
and that rope halter is oversized.
You've seen some of these big time clinicians to be teaching this stuff. This stuff absolutely drives me nuts. I'm going to break it down. And it's the first thing is when people take their horses, like, I'm going to back my horse up, and they just do this. And they're like, back up, horse, back up, horse, right? And they start doing, you see how.
Now, even for an example, I don't like to do that to animals, even to show an example. I would rather use a stationary object to show what I mean. But, I mean, people tend to learn more when they see the actual response of an animal when you do that.
Like, he's like, you rude asshole. Like, he picks his head up, he hollows his back out, because when you wiggle his finger, see how his head comes up, everything like.
Well, also your oversized halter is going to hit him in the eye.
And for this horse, that's pretty rude because that's not how we do it around here. That's not how you should be backing your horse up. And does it get your horse backing? Sure, it's a conceptual thing, but it is one of the worst ways to actually teach your horses to back up. Because it hollows their back out. Good. It does not transfer.
I mean, I think they're going to haul their back out anyway as they're moving backwards. It just seems like that's just how their body works. But again, I don't know.
How you ride your horse under saddle. And the other thing is that when we're working around our horses on the ground, you see some of these people and they're like, okay, I'm going to get my horse's hindquarters. And so they come around here and they crouch down like a tiger. And they just start chasing these horses around. Aww. And he's looking at me like, since when did you become a predator? And they're like, you need to get back, horse. And they just start doing this. And see how he's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Right?
Poor baby.
It's absolutely ridiculous. No, that drives
He's paying a lot more attention
now. It's been so bastardized in the horsemanship community for these are appropriate ways to groundwork our horse. Our groundwork with our horses should be directly setting our horses up for success. I'm sorry.
Agreed.
I know. We had to make our point clear here, all these people, that our groundwork should be setting our horses up for success.
See, a horse is very jumpy
when we go to get on their back.
You can counter condition that.
The stuff we're doing on the ground is not setting our horses up for success when we go to get on them. We're wasting time.
Agreed.
It's pointless. Because when I do step on Johnny's back here and I go to ask him to back up, now this lead rope is now my reins. And guess what I don't do to back my horse up? I don't start wiggling my reins like an idiot to get my horse to back up, right? This horse is a pretty sensitive horse and he's like, that wasn't super cool, man. Like, I don't really appreciate you doing that. And your horse doesn't appreciate it either, whether you've been doing it for 1 week or 1 year or 10 years, right? Where these horses can start to softly back up. Be able to correlate that.
See, he's counter conditioning the response from earlier.
Like, we don't need to be doing this and doing that. See, he's already like, what is wrong with you, right? When we use our body position on the ground, well, we're asking that horse to back up. Well, we're asking that horse to move their shoulders, asking that horse to move their hindquarters. We need to think about our body position when we're riding our horses, right? Are our shoulders, our hips, and our heels aligned? Are we? Because what does that do? That gives us balance. When I walk around my horse and ask my horse to ask him to get his hindquarters moved over, I want to be balanced through my feet. I want to be stepping balanced and softly through my feet. I don't want to be stepping like this off balance, right? I shouldn't be riding off balance. I shouldn't be stepping off balance. So if I ask my horse to go and back up and I step to him, I want to be stepping balanced through my feet. That way my horse can start to
the horse is, putting a little pressure on the horse and he moves his head.
And I'm not doing this number, right? You can see it already affects him versus I stand straight up. I've got my shoulders, my hips, my heels, everything's coming together and I'm balanced all the way through. And that way, if I go to ask my horse to move his shoulders over, I open my shoulders, ask my horse to move their shoulders over, right? All of that is directly connected to how we go to ride our horses, okay? We need to be moving balanced and square through our bodies on the ground, not crouching like a freaking tiger, acting like we're gonna eat them. They're prey animals, okay? And our groundwork should be directly setting our horses up for success when we get on their back. As we come to the last and final point of the horrible
See, when he is on his back, though, when he's back in the bit, his head is so low. I mean, he has a nice flat top line, but still, he just looks kind of like he's like
teaches. How many of you guys have heard
kind of dead inside?
That you need to steer him with the inside rein. That in order to get your horse to go that new way, you need to open that inside rein and touch that inside rein to their nose. Be able to feel their mouth, whether it's your Boselle or your snaffle. It's like, I need him to go to the left and take that left rein and get that horse to follow my rein to the left. And why is that such a big issue? Well, it's going to become more transparent to you here when I trot this horse around. Because
I think he has spurs
so many times these horses are on a loose rein. We've been disengaging their hind end, and then we're going to go steer these horses around. And so they'll take this inside rein and they'll say, now follow my hand this way. And then we'll go this way. And I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go another change of direction. So I'm going to use my inside rein only and ask that horse to move over. And then I'm going to ask that horse to go again.
Is he talking about neck reining now?
Again, and no outside rein or anything. You can see how this horse continually starts to get more and more off balance because we're pulling the horse to the inside. And that's one of the worst things that we can do. And it gets these horses super loose and it gets them unbalanced. Why? Because when we pull that inside rein, you'll notice that it adds a ton of bend to this horse's body, bend through the body, okay? And that causes the horse to lose their sense of balance, and it causes them to lose their sense of impulsion and the drive from behind. Versus, we need to think about riding our horses like a dance. And so when I want my horse to change directions, I need to lead. I need to open to the inside through my seat. But if my horse doesn't follow me, then I need to drive them off the outside aids, okay?
Okay, well, he's going more about the steering methods, which is, not anything that I particularly have anything to comment about. So we're just going to go ahead and end that video here. But this is Colton Wood's Horsemanship. I agree with some things he said. I disagree with some things he said. But I think it's, in the end, I believe whatever is best for the horse. And I believe that bits and spurs and whips and all that are not the best for the horse. But yeah, let me know what you think of this video. Go say howdy do to your little critters. Say howdy do for me. Give them some kind of love and they appreciate. And until next time, practice peace, patience, and positivity.